Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler at the University of Virginia. Just the two of us today. And Ziggy, I don't know if you saw this. I don't think Jack hit it up in our group chat, but apparently he went off today in the student faculty basketball game for the team he coaches, the middle school team. I get a text from Jack that just says, went nuclear. 28 points, game-winning three-point shot. And I'm just laughing at the thought of Jack. He asked me to go to the game, and I was sitting at a traffic light, like going, all right, I could go to the gym, or I could park in the parking lot right next to me, walk 30 feet in the freezing cold, and watch Jack play against 14-year-old boys and girls in a basketball game. And I drove straight to the gym.
So you're telling me you missed the Wilt Chamberlain 100-point game.
I missed Jack's Michael Jordan moment. Jack's a good basketball player, don't get me wrong. But apparently he was pulling up from 40 feet, and that's what we heard from Jack. He's pulling up from 40 feet, and there are teachers saying, how are you doing this? And he was like, sometimes it goes in. At the end of the game, he steals the ball from one of the kids he coaches, gets an N1 layup apparently he hacked the kid too, no call, makes an N1 layup to win the game. And the student section rushes the court, and he goes, I had 30 phones in my face. He says the best moment of his life. So Jack is a local hero or villain, depending on who you ask. But I thought you'd enjoy hearing that.
What's with it? I mean, I can see why he's not here now. I mean, after that performance, he's got to go celebrate.
Oh, celebrate. I mean, maybe an ice bath. It's we're not 18 anymore. I'm sure that Jack will be a little sore tomorrow. It's funny, we talked about whether or not we wanted to record this episode. It felt like throughout the day, where Ziggy texts me in the morning, hey, why don't we hop on tonight? And I'm like, we kind of had this plan this week to just take it easy and get back into the routine next week. Ziggy's like, okay, sure. We'll take off. Like 7 hours go by, and I start seeing different updates on my phones on different stories. Jordan Love working out with certain people. Like, oh my God.
There's so much interesting stuff.
Should we record? And Ziggy's like, we have to. And to some degree, that is what makes the difference between making it or not in in the podcasting world, is just putting out content. So here we are. We couldn't stay away for 3 days. Is that what we were talking about here?
I mean, look, man, there's always interesting stuff happening, and the people have to know. We have a Jordan Love scoop that, as you said, no one in the major media is covering. It's no
one's covered it. We'll have the Jordan Love story. We'll talk a little bit about Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins. A really important decision for Miami to make coming up, and one that recently teams have messed up handling the quarterback situation. We'll also hit on Mike Zimmer to the Cowboys, whether Dallas is doing enough to lift themselves from where they are, where they've been for the past few years. What else we got? Chiefs. Ziggy thinks that the Chiefs are starting to get into when people are talking about Patrick Mahomes, they're almost deifying him right now.
But I don't think it lines up with the facts.
So we'll talk about that as well. But we'll start off, and this is a great spot where Jack could have been here. If he was here tonight, would be great. But the Pittsburgh Steelers have been in the news recently because Adam Schefter, when he went on the Pat McAfee show, he said, we know the Steelers are gonna go out and get some type of quarterback, whether that's Ryan Tannehill, whether that's Russell Wilson, whether that's Justin Fields. Mike Tomlin's a big fan of Justin Fields. We'll keep that in mind during the offseason and in the coming weeks. So naturally, when you throw out a talent like Justin Fields' name being associated with another team, and of course, there's the rumors about the Bears possibly trading him for as high as a second-round pick, your ears perk up a little bit. And that's a name where, if I'm a Steelers fan, it gets my attention. Do I think Justin Fields is the best quarterback in the world? No. But he's certainly exciting. He's certainly dynamic. So, Ziggy, if you were sitting in Jack's shoes or the shoes of any Steelers fan and you hear the name Justin Fields, is that someone that you'd be interested in pursuing?
It's tough not to be interested in Fields. I mean, you look at Kenny Pickett, and Kenny Pickett is a good player, but he's not really elite in anything, right? There's no one trait you could point at and say, Kenny Pickett, he's one of the best in the NFL at that. Justin Fields, whatever his shortcomings are, and he's got some shortcomings. We've talked about it on this show before.
He does.
He is elite at something in the NFL. There are maybe one or two quarterbacks, if that are as good as running as him. And frankly, if you compare him to someone like Lamar Jackson, he still comes out looking pretty good. You've got a Steelers offensive line that's incredible at run blocking, right? You've got strong running backs. And I think you can almost I see a vision where the Steelers do what the Ravens did in the early years of Lamar Jackson. Use the play action to set up straightforward reads to guys like Deontay Johnson. You have a really powerful running game. And you have Justin Fields put up 1,500 yards on the ground.
Would you be comfortable giving Fields a long-term contract, though?
So you can't. Here's the thing, and this is why trading for Fields is difficult. I'm wary to give up too much draft capital because then Justin Fields' agent is immediately on the phone with your front office saying, hey, you just gave up a first-round pick. You just gave up a second-round pick. Do you want to let that go to waste by letting my guy walk? So if you're a team, you have to be willing to negotiate tough, be willing to use franchise tags. And if it doesn't work out, not sign him to a long-term deal. But look, if Justin Fields hits and has a great year, you've got to be happy to offer him something. The Steelers just don't have a better way to acquire talent at quarterback. It's not like they've got the number 1 overall pick. And with Mike Tomlin coaching, you aren't getting the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, it's going to come down to whether or not you trust Kenny Pickett. And from the sample size that we've seen, Pickett has his moments, and there was all the hoopla about the fourth quarter comebacks and his fourth quarter statistics. But when you really step back and look at it, if your starting quarterback struggling as much as Kenny Pickett was for the first 3 quarters of most games, that's a problem at the NFL level. And what's exciting about Fields is that he is one of those guys where I know the passing has been an issue. And at times he looks really good. That ceiling for Justin Fields is as high as it is for most guys in the league. Ziggy, let's pretend Justin Fields hits his ceiling. Well, we're talking about like a borderline top 10 quarterback here, right? So probably like 7 to 10.
He's got a lot of upside.
Yeah, the upside is awesome and intriguing. Going into next year, I asked you before the show started, I'd rather have Justin Fields than Kenny Pickett. You would as well?
And Justin Fields has proven to have more talent. And look, here's the thing for the Steelers. They absolutely have to add competition for Kenny Pickett. Mason Rudolph is not the right kind of competition. Ryan Tannehill is not the right kind of competition. No. You want to bring in someone who's really good. And the fit with Arthur Smith, I think, isn't super neat. Right? Justin Fields has never shown an ability to throw deep balls in the play action game. But the Bears also haven't asked this of him a lot. You don't know what you're doing. So I think if the Steelers are trying to revitalize the offense and really put forth something that can match their defense, you improve the offensive line. Get some guys who can pass block a little bit. Dan Moore, I'm sorry, you have to go. Great run blocker, but arguably the worst pass protecting left tackle in the league. And you try and make things work. You bring in a new offensive coordinator, which they did, and you have a real competition and see who wins.
I mean, think about the quarterbacks they rolled out last year. It was Kenny Pickett. It was Mason Rudolph. It was Mitch Trubisky. I mean, the Steelers had competent quarterback play throughout the year. This team made the playoffs. If Justin Fields is there, I have my doubts with him. But there have been games, think about Washington, where he looked awesome. And if you can get that out of Justin Fields, I do think the Steelers is a good organization with a good culture. Now you're talking about possibly a huge reward. And even if you're able to do it for a 3rd round pick, I love it. Yeah. 2nd rounder, a little more hesitant. But a 3rd round pick to take a swing, how many 3rd round picks really work out for teams?
I mean, for me, it's less. There are 3rd round picks that work out, but the upside that you're getting with Justin Fields is enormous. And the question that Steelers and Steelers fans have to ask themselves isn't how excited am I to have Justin Fields in a vacuum? There are a lot of better options. The question is, do we have a realistic way to acquire more talent than Justin Fields? If they want to trade 3 first-round picks, they can get someone more talented than Justin Fields. But that's not how the Steelers roll. They're not going to do that. So I think adding Fields, it's one of the better fits. There are a couple other teams like the Falcons that I could see making a move. You don't want to get into too deep a bidding war. You shouldn't be trading something like a first-round pick for him. But there is definitely an opportunity here. And the Steelers make a lot of sense.
Steelers are the favorite right now. According to DraftKings, the odds are minus 125
stuff. The DraftKings stuff is not tracking. I generally trust betting markets. The offseason draft pick, Blake Corum is minus 100 to go to the Wolves or to go to the Chargers. This is ridiculous. No, 2nd or 3rd round running back should be minus 100 to go to any team.
Well, hey, right now, minus 125 to go to the Steelers, staying with the Bears, plus 200 for Fields. I know my boss, Colin Coward, said he would be very wary if he were Justin Fields going to Pittsburgh, because you're going to a defensive head coach and Mike Tomlin. The way that organization,
Justin Fields needs an opportunity to start, and he might not get many more of those. There are not a lot of teams that are clamoring to start him. A chance to have a starting job for much of the year. And again, it's not like they don't have weapons, right? You've got Jaylen Warren, you've got Deontay Johnson, you've got Muth, you got Pickens. Like, it's hardly the worst situation. There's a new offensive coordinator in town. Like, I'd rather have that than, say, Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, Jerry Dulac from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette said, I quote, "I can't imagine Fields wanting to sign with a team where he won't be the number one QB, and I don't believe the Steelers are in the market for a number one QB." I don't know Jerry's sources here, but I actually disagree with both of them. I think Pittsburgh has their eyes on is definitely looking around, because you didn't get what you wanted from Pickett last year. You're going into year 3 now. Teams are less patient than they used to be. It's no longer the world where, when Christian Ponder was with the Vikings, I remember going into year 3 after horrible quarterback play for 2 years. I'm sitting back going, all right, 3rd-year breakout, like, let's go. You're not seeing that patience anymore.
Well, I mean,
and on top of go ahead.
Kenny Pickett hasn't shown you anything to justify that patience.
Well, no, he hasn't.
Started 24 games. He's thrown 13 touchdowns and 13 interceptions.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that you used to have patience where even if you didn't see it, teams are still hopeful, and usually got to that 3rd year. Now, if you're not showing it by year 1, I mean, Josh Rosen was out of the league very quickly. like Josh Rosen did not play many games before he was gone. And then Justin Fields, if he were going to go to Pittsburgh, he would be the starting quarterback. There's no world where Fields goes to Pittsburgh and is not the starting quarterback week 1. I'd be stunned to see it. Another quarterback, though, whose name is kind of starting to come up in Steelers circles.
One we're familiar with.
One that we're very familiar with, and one that I love Kirk Cousins. He is just on my Mount Rushmore of favorite football players of all time. I mean, him, Peterson, Harvin, and maybe someone else in there. Like, Kirk Cousins has made it for me. Let's see what we got here. Mike Florio, talking about the Steelers' potential interest in Kirk Cousins, said, "I was talking to some people last week who seemed to be intrigued by the possibility of the Steelers making a play for Kirk Cousins. Those people are very close to, if not within, the Cousins camp. There's an acknowledgement that it could happen. The Falcons and Steelers are the 2 teams that I think the Cousins camp is keeping an eye on."
I'm sorry, what is very close to, if not within, the Cousins camp? What does that mean?
I think it means that there are people who are very close to Kirk Cousins or associated with him directly.
So we can set the Florio stuff aside, I think, because Florio he's a gossip monger.
There we go. True. Ziggy versus media.
But setting that aside, it makes a lot of sense. I think there's a reason we said the Steelers and the Falcons are teams that make sense for Fields. Those are both teams that are in pretty desperate needs for a quarterback and are interested in an upgrade. And I think it's interesting you're getting 2 guys who are stylistically so far apart being mocked to both teams, right? Kirk Cousins,
completely different. Yep.
Yeah. Justin Fields, your worry is, can he deliver the ball on time? Kirk Cousins, the concern is the guy going to rupture his Achilles? Can this guy walk after rupturing his Achilles?
Yeah, can he move if if you have Myles Garrett bearing down on him?
Yeah, Kirk Cousins has 958 career rushing yards in 11 seasons.
Think about the guys you have coming after you in the AFC North. You have the entire Ravens defense. You have Myles Garrett and that ridiculous Browns defense. Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati. Trey Hendrickson's still in Cincinnati, right? I'm trying to remember if he had if he's becoming a free agent soon. So this is a tough division, the AFC North, and you can see a world where Kirk Cousins goes to the Steelers and just gets absolutely lit up behind that offensive line. That's what we were talking about before we started, is whether or not you could realistically build up that line enough to protect Kirk and give him a chance, because we've seen countless times when that Viking line was trash, Kirk doesn't stand a shot. But if you give him time, he'll pick you apart. And I actually think, dude, and that Steeler offense with Pickens, with Deontay Johnson, like you said, the weapons are good. If you're able to just shore up the line a little bit with the quarterbacks the Steelers had this year, you give them Kirk Cousins. Would it shock me if they had gone on a run to the AFC Championship game? Kirk is playing the best football of his career this year.
No, yeah, I mean, you look at what Arthur Smith was able to accomplish with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee, right? Isn't Kirk Cousins just kind of better Ryan Tannehill? Like their play
Much
styles,
better. Much better.
yeah, no, much like their play styles are pretty similar. Tannehill runs a fair bit more. But even setting that aside, I mean, if you're describing the Arthur Smith offense quickly, it's run the ball a lot, set up play action, take deep, accurate shots to a receiver. I mean, George Pickens could put up 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns with Kirk Cousins throwing.
Oh yeah, I mean Justin Jefferson is the best receiver in football, in my opinion, and no matter who's throwing in the ball, he's a machine. But I do think having Kirk Cousins be his starting quarterback for the last 3 years has been huge. I mean, Kirk is one of the best guys in the league at delivering the ball, and you saw that a lot this year when Josh Dobbs was in, when Nick Mullins was in. Go back and watch those games. There are a number of throws that are just a little behind Hawkins. I mean, dude, TJ Hawkins, it would go up and just get shot in the ribs every single time. But there are overthrows. That's how Jefferson got hurt against the Raiders. It's always a little bit off. Where when Kirk is quarterback, I mean, it's on the money. He's hitting people in stride. That's the difference between the elite quarterbacks in the league and your average to below average, is making that 3-inch difference up.
But on the other hand, I mean, Kirk Cousins is going to want a lot of money from the Steelers because he's the kind of guy who can demand it, right? Justin Fields, I mean, you talk about worrying about handing Justin Fields a contract. Kirk Cousins is going to want that contract now, coming off an injury.
Steelers Kirk doesn't make bad deals.
Yeah, no, the Steelers are projected $14 million over the cap. Now, there's ways to make money for a Kirk Cousins deal, but that involves doing things like restructuring TJ Watt, committing multiple years down the line for Kirk Cousins coming off his career's by far biggest and worst injury, right? It means having to make some tough decisions about guys like Cam Hayward and Allen Robinson. I guess Allen Robinson's not really a hard decision.
Yeah, Allen Robinson.
I just mean like signing Kirk Cousins requires a big financial commitment. Justin Fields requires a big draft capital commitment. And Ryan Tannehill requires a big Kenny Pickett commitment. So no matter what the Steelers do, they're making a big commitment to some quarterback they're bringing in. It's going to be really interesting to see who it is.
If you had to rank them, let's pretend you're a Steeler fan. How would you rank it between Cousins, Fields, Pickett? Just leave Tannehill out of there for who you want as your starting quarterback.
Tannehill's clearly 4.
Yeah.
That is Arthur Smith's revenge. So number 3, I think Steelers fans probably aren't going to like this. I think it's Kenny Pickett. Rolling in with him as your projected starter next season means something has gone wrong. Unless you bring in competition and he really shows them up, you can't ride with him.
I'm with
Number 2, I think Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is the better option for next year's quarterback play, but I worry about the injury. I worry that he's not going to be himself because that Viking season, as you say, was the best of his career. But that should make you wonder whether he's going to be able to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And then number 1, Justin Fields. He'll cost you some draft capital, but he's got elite upside. He's still pretty young. I can see them building an offense around him without having to completely overhaul the team.
You're taking a risk there. Do I think it would work? Probably not. But
I mean, again, if you're the Steelers, what else do you do? Right?
You're taking a swing.
At a certain point, I know that they say they're happy with Tomlin. I know they say they're happy constantly going like 9-8 or 10-6 and not winning in the playoffs. 10-7, excuse me. But like that, I don't believe for a second that they've grown complacent. And if they have grown complacent, the fans should riot. That's not to say you have to blow everything up, but you have to be constantly looking to upgrade at quarterback if you don't have one of those guys.
Yep. And I think that both those guys would be an upgrade over Pickett. All right, let's move on. I did not like seeing this, and this is peak off-season content. Well, we're 5 days in.
It's the off-season, man.
But it's the off-season, and you know what? When I saw this, I did lean back and go, that's what I'd want to see if I were a Packer fan. On Twitter today, I'm just scrolling through, and I come across it's February, and Jordan Love is training with legends like Drew Brees and UFC goats like Dominick Cruz. I look at his picture, I'm like, yeah, I guess he is. And you know what? It sounds really silly to be making a big deal about this because it's at the end of the day, it's not. But I would want my quarterback training with Drew Brees. I would want my quarterback training with UFC people. The alternative for years in the past was Aaron Rodgers locking himself in a dark room for 4 days and making a whole mess of offseason problems. Must be refreshing as a Packer fan to sit back and say, all right, this is someone who wants to win and is clearly driven to get to the top level.
Yeah, I mean, there is something magical about having that young quarterback that is pretty good, but is trying to prove himself, prove he deserves, like he belongs. And I mean, again, you're seeing there were a whole bunch of people. Like I think I saw Brett Ripon in that picture.
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of random people there. So a big time motivational speaker who's sort of well known in these circles. But like Jordan Love, it seems like his number one priority this offseason is locking in and improving. He's not happy with how the season ended. I don't know. Aaron Rodgers didn't really seem all that torn up about missing the playoffs. Jordan Love, it seems like he's furious that he threw the game-losing interception, not against like the Lions to try and enter the playoffs, but against the 49ers who ultimately won. Like they went to the Super Bowl, they won the NFC. So I don't know. It's, again, you say there's something silly about this, but it does say something that like Jordan Love is going and working with combat fighters to like get ready for another season. He wants to win.
No, and I mean, jokes aside, because it is kind of fun to look at this and be like, he's working out with UFC people, but Drew Brees first is someone that you'd love to have working with your quarterback. Talk about accuracy issues that Jordan Love has had. No one in the league was more accurate than Drew Brees. Just someone who could give little tips of footwork, whatever it may be. He's someone that is good to be affiliated with. And the second thing you like to see, as we said before, is in the NFL, every single person in that league is top tier. They are the best at what they do in the world. I mean, everyone works hard in the NFL to get there. But what separates the good from the great a lot of the times is that extra little bit of effort. Now, I don't know what other people's schedules are, but you hear stories about guys like Brady where they're at the Pro Bowl, and I can't remember who, maybe it was Edelman, was in a golf cart and, driving by a football field at midnight at the Pro Bowl. Everyone's enjoying pina coladas and strawberry daiquiris, and you see Tom Brady working on his game, midnight, middle of the night. That's the kind of thing that separates the great players from the very good, or really the all-time players from the great players. Not that I want to start, saying Jordan Love is an all-time great.
We're not saying that, but like, surely all else being equal, you'd rather your guy be working like that in the offseason.
Yes, I would rather see my quarterback working with Drew Brees and UFC fighters than not. So it's just something that you look back and go, okay, nice, because this is a time where people can go on vacation. And I do think Jordan Love is a fierce competitor who wants to win. And if he comes out next season, I keep saying this, if Jordan Love comes out early next year and looks anything like the quarterback we saw over the last 10 games, I'm going to be so sad. I will be devastated, Ziggy, because that to me will be a confirmation that this guy's here to stay. When you're as hot as he was to end last season, there's always a little bit of doubt as to whether or not that can carry over. But if he comes out early and looks the part, now we're talking about someone who's figured it out. And LaFleur has slowly took him off the leash this year. And there could be another level to Jordan Love that we haven't even seen yet. He's still a super young guy. That's my biggest fear. And things like this just make me go, oh.
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of people talking about this, but like Jordan Love is entering a big contract year next year. If he plays well, he could clear $300 million. And if he plays poorly, like if he has a really bad year and these last 9 games we saw were just sort of an aberration, then he might not make 20 more in the NFL. Jordan Love is going to be 1,000% locked in because he's pissed he lost to the 49ers. He's pissed that the Packers haven't paid him what he wanted. He feels like he deserves more. And you can see it right now. He's going to try and get those things.
I do think that from the way that he played to end the year, a lot of those, it didn't just look like Nick Foles got super hot for a few games for the most part, an average quarterback. The things you saw from Jordan Love were the makings of a superstar, unfortunately. And that's why I'm pretty confident this guy's going to come out and have a great season next year. It wasn't like he had one good game, and then a couple bad games in a row. Really, there was just that Giants game that he sort of struggled. And in the 49ers, he wasn't great, but he was good.
I mean, he did about as well as Patrick Mahomes.
In which? In the
against the 49ers.
Oh, yeah. No, just about. I mean, the turnovers, he had, 3 bad throws in that game? The problem is 2 of them went for interceptions. That's where they got was ultimately the bad throws came back to bite them. You can't be perfect, but in that game, you sort of had to be. At the end of the day, though, I look at a picture like this and I say it's just a picture, but it is the better alternative than what else you could be seeing.
Can't you just feel the omens starting to set in that we've got like another superstar Packers quarterback? It's like, imagine.
Oh, I've come to terms with it.
Like, imagine. I mean, we're Vikings fans. Imagine someone like last year sits back to tell you that like the next Packers quarterback is going to challenge the inevitable NFC winners in the divisional round, go on a hot streak. And then immediately when he loses, he's going to start working out with UFC guys, like learning that mentality of how to like choke out the Vikings, get the whole North to submit. Like that's what I'm feeling right now. I feel like Jordan Love is just ready to come in and beat us all up. And I'm so sick of it.
I'm looking at the picture on Reddit, and it is funny. Someone goes, "What a random group of guys." It is kind of a random group of dudes to just gather together, but you do see how big Jordan Love is. What was he? 6'3"?
I think he's 6'4".
I think he's 6'4". I mean, this is a huge dude. Like this son of a bitch. Yeah. I'd be happy if I were a Packer fan, even though it's just a picture. We'll move on from Green Bay and their never-ending.
What was my prediction at the end of last season when the Packers were getting ready to play the Vikings? It's weird to win that one because we're not winning again until 2023.
Yeah, we're never winning again, and we lost by 30 points. It was miserable. I actually think for Packers fans, I'm putting together a list of my top 5 hated Packers. I think that could be a funny video, including a name that you'll understand when you hear the reveal, but you probably wouldn't see coming for maybe a top 3 spot, actually. Yeah. I think I have the list settled in my head. So you could guess in the comment section which Packer you think I hate the most from my life. And really, the sad thing is I like most of the Packer players, but some of them, actually like all these guys, they're just annoying. Okay. Well, we're sticking sort of with this NFC North theme. It's not an NFC North show today, but Mike Zimmer, new Cowboys defensive coordinator, someone that we are very familiar with the Vikings for several years. Did a good job for the most part. Talk about all-time Viking coaches. Mike Zimmer is probably the 3rd best coach we've ever had, which is, unfortunate that we've only had one real playoff run with him, or one good playoff run that ended in a blowout NFC championship.
We won 2 playoff games. We won the North twice. We never finished last while he was coach. Like, he did a good job.
He says there's a reputation out there that I'm a jerk or something like that. It is what it is, I guess. But, since it was announced I was going to be here, I've heard from so many players that played for me. What do you say here? Players here, not just defensive backs, the linebackers, defensive linemen, have texted me and said how happy they were for me. I think if I was such a jerk, I wouldn't be hearing from those guys. At the end of his time in Minnesota, that's when things started to really go sour for Zimmer. Eric Kendricks said, now we can walk around the hallways and not feel like we're on eggshells. That was something that raised a lot of eyebrows. But then you see guys like Deion Sanders who played for him and just love the guy. Zimmer is a hard coach. He's a tough coach. He's not going to take crap from players. And that might be a little bit of what the Cowboys need, because they're not making many other moves, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting sort of situation the Cowboys have found themselves in, because I've always associated Jerry Jones with being very impulsive. Like, when he doesn't like what's happening, he moves on. And he's almost sending a signal. I don't think he really thinks this, but because he's sticking with McCarthy, he's sticking with Dak, they're running the same core, more or less, back they have the past few years. He's either saying that he thinks the results are acceptable, or that he really has been convinced that this year changes around the corner. And I've looked at it, and I think there are some things that Zimmer can help them improve at, but I worry that the Cowboys are starting to get a little bit complacent.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily getting complacent, as in maybe just believing in this team. And you could be wrong believing in this team with the way that they performed in big situations. I mean, a year ago they were in the divisional round, but they keep losing. They keep losing to really the same teams. Even in San Francisco, Green Bay's beating them. I think if I were a Cowboys fan, there's so much talent on this roster, and you genuinely had a really good season outside of a couple games here or there. I would be okay with running it back. The question that I would have had is, Mike McCarthy. He's the guy that I'm circling, saying that was interesting. That was a little alarming to me that he came back. If there was going to be a change, I think the players themselves, actually, they have a great roster. They're loaded. McCarthy was the one that made me go, I'm not sure they're on the right path here.
Well, this is what I worry about, right? You say the roster is great, and that's obvious in the regular season. They have won, over the past 3 years, they've won more regular season games than anyone else. They're 36-15. They win 70% of their games. That is hard to do. And they are 1-3 in the playoffs.
And Dak looked really bad. He looks really bad in most of these games. Especially this past one against Green Bay, just off. You even saw CeeDee Lamb kind of looking around like, what is going on here? But you can't, what are you going to do? Move on from Dak? The dude was a borderline MVP candidate throughout much of the year. So let's say you bring back McCarthy now, okay, which they have, and you rerun it with this team with Mike Zimmer. There could be a good Zimmer effect. I just remember the first year that he came into the Vikings. The year before, the Vikings had 30 points per game and 300, I believe it was yards per game? I don't have that here. But it was 30 points per game. I mean, they were horrible, Ziggy. The 2013 Vikings defense, this was before you became a Viking fan, couldn't watch them. I mean, unbelievably bad. And the next year, 21.4 points per game allowed, 18.9, 19.2. Then the 15.8 team that went to the NFC Championship game. It was really only towards the end of the Zimmer era where we started to kind of creep back to our old tendencies. But when he first came in, there was an immediate impact. And guys that you didn't think were going to be key contributors, Terrence Newman was 38 years old or whatever, balling out. Captain Munnerlyn was a good player, but balling out. We saw the growth of Danielle Hunter. We saw the emergence of Everson Griffin, really, to a superstar. Harrison Smith was used in so many unbelievable ways. He's great with cornerbacks. You got Deron Bland. You got Gilmore. You've got Trayvon Diggs coming back. It's hard not to get excited about a guy like Mike Zimmer, who, sure, is a little cranky, and he can be short, but the results have been there his entire career. I would be jacked up.
The Cowboys need that kind of crankiness a little bit. They need you look at the penalty rankings and how they've been in penalties, it's ridiculous. Zimmer's first 7 years of the Vikings, every single year they were top 10 in penalties on defense. That is, they had the 10th or best least, except for 1 year where they were 12th. Multiple years they're first least in defensive penalties given up. Cowboys over the past 4 years, 22nd, 32nd, 24th, 31st. You look at offsides penalties. Cowboys fans know these offsides penalties were killer. They had 16 defensive offsides penalties this year. With the Vikings, Zimmer never had more than 4. Right? So, this is a team that, and Paul, you've seen those offside penalties when it's 3rd and 2, you jump offsides, you give them a new set of downs. That kills your defense. So I think having someone who's going to come in and not take any nonsense, get some discipline in order, but try and keep the good things going, which is what he said he wants to do, could really unlock a lot of the talent on this defense.
Didn't they do that against Detroit on the two-point conversion?
Yeah,
sent back to the 7-yard line, and then they jumped off sides.
Yeah, and I know that ultimately didn't end up mattering, and there was a lot of controversy there. But you can't do that on a 2-point conversion. They're handing you the game, and you're just letting them go back up.
Yeah, I love the hire, and I know that Dan Quinn left to take on a head coaching position, and Dan Quinn, did a good job.
He did a great job. Let's be clear. He did a great job.
He did a great job. But Mike Zimmer, I do think will continue that, and I like having a little bit of an edge to that. There was a nastiness to the Vikings defense when he was coaching. Sure, maybe Eric Hendricks and some of the players at the end of it got unhappy with him, but when it was rolling, I remember there were games. And let's be fair, that Viking defense had a great collection of players. This Cowboy defense,
they've got a great collection.
Really,
what Mike Zimmer, his players never had issues tackling, right? You can at least say that they always
third
hit
down
hard
defense,
and hit clean.
Great third down defenses.
Can you imagine, like, if they have a guy who could tackle Aaron Jones or a guy who could tackle Romeo Doubs, that Packers game could have been completely different, and we wouldn't be sitting here worrying about Jordan Love being the next superstar in the NFL.
Dude, there were yeah, right. There were games. I remember that NFC Championship year with the Vikings. You were expecting the defense to hold people to under 10 points. If they scored, you were shocked. Like he's just always been great. And a lot of players love him. Okay, let's move on. We got a couple more here. Ziggy, would you read that question? So someone left a comment recently, and I thought I had responded saying, "Great question. We'll talk about it." Apparently, I didn't.
This is from a Colin Revere 6270. They said, currently there's no quarterback with the same level of rivalry as Mahomes. Or like there's no quarterback at the same level as Mahomes. That's compared to Brady, who like had to go through the AFC gauntlet, they say. The Steelers dynasty is a great example of this. Like Brady constantly running into Roethlisberger and like those guys. Are there any AFC teams that could rival the Chiefs and potentially go on a run?
Yeah. You know, you talk about the Steelers teams to Brady. Well, those are very good Steelers teams, but you got some pretty elite teams in the AFC right now. I mean, that Steelers team would be good really in any era, but I don't think it's fair to Patrick Mahomes' run to say that beating Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and beating Joe Burrow at times. I mean, those are some really good football teams too. So I don't want to discredit Kansas City at all. At the same time, you know, those Steelers teams, I remember rooting against them vehemently because Jack was a Steelers fan. And at the lunch table, you know, bragging rights were of the utmost importance, and Jack kind of ran that with the Steelers. When your friends are Dolphins, Jets, and Vikings fans,
it's open city.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Jack's walking into lunch and he's boom, that's what's going on. Out of those teams, though, the current AFC teams, if you're gonna have the next like challenger to Mahomes, I'd probably go Joe Burrow and Cincinnati. You know, that's the team that has beaten them in Arrowhead. That's the one guy that has had success in his career against Patrick. I think the Ravens are very good. I think the Bills are very good. But that Cincinnati team, Joe Burrow is the one guy to me that when he goes against Mahomes, you know, I've picked him in the past, and that's very few quarterbacks do I feel confident in.
The thing I worry about with Joe Burrow is he's not a good player when he's injured, and he's increasingly starting injured. I mean, you saw at the start of the season, like when he was getting over that calf injury, he looked horrendous. And I think Joe Burrow, again, when healthy, is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But it's easy to discount. I mean, the reason that the Bengals were able to beat the Chiefs in the game everyone's thinking of was because of a complete offensive meltdown.
No, yeah, in the last 21-0, right?
Well, in the last 7 drives of the game, the Chiefs scored 3 points and turned the ball over twice. So, like, that was all of the second half and overtime.
Dude, Bills fans were sitting back during that game going, where the hell was this a week ago with the 13-second game?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Chiefs versus the Ravens this year, right? How many points did they put up in the second half?
What,
0.
Chiefs Ravens?
Yeah, the Chiefs put up 0.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like you look at the Bills game, that easily could have, if it weren't for that dropped 58-yard pass, that easily could have gone differently. Mm-hmm. So like I'll say, Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, and I'm glad that people are finally recognizing this. But it's just true that in order to win Super Bowls, you have to get lucky. Now, obviously, better teams get lucky more than worse teams because they put themselves in the position where that happens. But like you look at some of the more impactful plays like that benefited the Chiefs this offseason or this playoff run. There was that San Francisco muffed punt. There was that dropped 54-yard pass. There was that Buffalo missed field goal. I feel like everyone has forgotten that like Buffalo missed a field goal to put
Ravens
that game
fumbled
away.
On the 1-yard line. Now I know that was a great play by Kansas City, but still, how often
against the 49ers,
yard?
the Chiefs recovered 6 of their 7 fumbles.
Dude, again, that's why I picked Kansas City over San Francisco. You just know that they're going to get the bounce their way.
But this is the thing: is we believe in facts and evidence here. And at a certain point, that luck will probably run out. Now, again, Mahomes is an all-time great quarterback. He is clearly the best quarterback in the league. But to pretend that there's no one even close to him or that the Chiefs are unbeatable, it's a weird mythology that's emerged from this playoff run. And that seems especially weird to emerge coming off 2 straight pretty medium performances from Mahomes. Again, he's big when it counts.
The end of the 49er game, yeah, he was unbelievable. And there
But,
are not a lot of quarterbacks.
You can't just look at the last drive, though, right? You have to look at the course of the game where they struggled. If it weren't for that muffed punt, they probably don't win. So
but he seemingly always gets the job done.
Yeah, and I mean, again, a lot of other elite quarterbacks have almost always gotten the job done, like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. I mean, again, Paul, you saw the analysis I put up in the chat earlier today. Like, Mahomes does better than them. But like, Aaron Rodgers is almost perfect on game-winning drives and big moments. Tom Brady is almost perfect on game-winning drives and big moments.
Rodgers has had his struggles. I mean, Mahomes is, what was he, 8 for 9 or something?
He was 8 for 9. Rodgers is 5 for 6. Brady's 11 for 14. Brees is 7 for 9. So
well,
like, Mahomes is
people
better.
Are going to look at that and say, I mean, I'm just thinking Rodgers. Was this playoff games or just in general?
So these were playoff games. Score differential -7-0. He got more than 20 seconds, less than 2 minutes. Every overtime drive counts, and missed field goals. I'm not going to punish a quarterback for missed field goals. Those count as scores.
Sure.
And like the point is just, again, I'm not saying Mahomes isn't good. He's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. But he easily could have lost some games if he didn't get lucky this time around. And that's how it is on almost every run.
To go on a Super Bowl run, you do have to get lucky. And I don't think people would say you're crazy for saying the Chiefs on this playoff run had an element of luck. People would say you're crazy if you called it all luck, which you're not.
No, of course it's not. Mahomes is a huge contributor, but this isn't the NBA. Right, in the NBA, when you have a best of 7, luck matters a lot less because you have so many more games. In football, any given Sunday is a saying for a reason. You never know what's going to happen. So, like, will the Chiefs win the Super Bowl next year? There's a reason their odds are opening at plus 700. They do not have a good chance of winning the Super Bowl next year compared to the field. Like, no, I'm not. I don't think the Chiefs are unstoppable. People are somehow like, they're imagining Mahomes as like locked catching up to Brady. Mythical. It's completely warped. The Brady Mahomes sort of like transitional era has completely warped people's expectations on how realistic it is to expect quarterbacks to win multiple Super Bowls.
Oh no, it's unbelievable what they've done. And I think Patrick Mahomes would be the first one to say that for any Super Bowl run, there is an element of luck that goes into it. That being said, at the end of the game, when you need a touchdown,
I'm picking him over anyone else.
Patrick Mahomes is the guy I want with the ball, and there's no coincidences there. That last drive, not much luck to it, but it is a combination throughout the game. Yeah, what do you say? They recovered 5 of the 6 fumbles in the Super Bowl.
6 of 7.
6 of 7. Things have to go your way to win a Super Bowl, and they have often gone the Chiefs' way. I mean, they had the Hurts dropped the snap in the Eagles game. That was a huge turn, the biggest turning point in the last 2 Super Bowls. Hurts dropping the snap on the quarterback run, and the punt ricocheting off of the ankle of a 49er player.
You need things to go your way.
Yeah, you do. But at the same time, we also appreciate and understand. I mean, I'm watching that game. Let me be clear.
Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. I'm happy. It seems that people have finally realized he's a cut above, but he's not invincible. He's not unbeatable. He's probably not winning the Super Bowl next year.
Ziggy just doesn't like seeing people rise to too much power. You gotta keep him in check. Now, that last drive, I was sitting back going, wow, like over the past week or two, maybe there have been a few times where the LeBron Steph game, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Super Bowl with Mahomes, in the moment, I just sat back going, I'm watching one of the greatest, a couple of the greatest players to ever do what they've done, do it again. And both times, lived up to the expectation. Okay, we got one more topic here. And you added this to the show very, very late in. I think, 30 seconds before I hit record on this?
But it's an interesting topic.
Oh, it's worthy. It's worthy. Please introduce.
So the Miami Dolphins are facing a difficult offseason decision. Tua Tagovailoa is up for a contract extension. Now, they've got the 5th-year option locked in, but he's going to go to the Dolphins and say, look, what did I do this year? I led the NFL in passing yards. I was 6th in touchdowns. I led one of the best offenses in the league. Yeah, we lost to Kansas City, but that was a team-wide failure. Everyone loses to Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
My performance over the past few years in this offense justifies top of the quarterback market money. And the Dolphins are going to have to face a choice. It's not easy to upgrade at quarterback. They're certainly in a spot where they don't have a lot of cap space. They don't have a lot of draft capital. They can't just go out and get that guy. So they're going to have to decide. They're in a similar situation in some ways as the Giants of Daniel Jones, just of a much better player.
That thing.
What do you do with Tua Tagovailoa? Do you sign him to the big deal and make him happy? Do you try and play hardball? Do you explore the trade market? Do you try and let him play out? Like, there's a lot of options, and none of them look very good.
The Dolphins roster is ready to win now. That's what's unfortunate/fortunate for Miami in this situation, is that you have a very good team, and their season was derailed from all the injuries on the defensive side of the ball.
Like always.
But again, that unit is stacked. Offense, you got Waddle, Hill, and Mostert, Achane. Like that, everywhere the Dolphins are ready to win. Yeah, actually, Kirk Cousins in Miami would be another good option. But with that said, it's so hard because when you're ready to win, and you have these teams that are ready to go on a potential Super Bowl run, and you don't have the quarterback, it is soul crushing. Like, you sit back there and you just go, I mean, there were Viking teams, I remember, right before we got Brett Favre, where you say, we have every single piece except the most important one. And because of that, we're a 7-10 team instead of a Super Bowl team. That is the effect of the quarterback. Now, sorry. No. If you do keep Tua, though, you may have to keep him long term, and or you may feel pressured to do that, like the Giants did with Daniel Jones, where he had a good year and they just gave him all this money, and people are saying, was he really worth 4 for 160? I don't think so. But what are we going to do? Just let him go? That's not necessarily the path. I would not go down that route if I were Miami. And then you gave a good alternative. Well, maybe not one that would be well received, but you gave an alternative.
Well, here's the thing: is the Dolphins are projected $51 million over the cap this year. Now, there are ways to bring that down, obviously, but the only ways they can really do it are either by doubling down on players like Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, who are very good players but are starting to get old. You don't necessarily want to tie yourself up to them longer than you have to.
Yeah.
Or extending Tua. That's it, basically, in terms of money. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. They already don't have the money for major upgrades. They were really, I think, more than people realized, all in on this season. But
you said that several times during this year.
Yeah, well, I felt like I didn't see anyone talking about it. But the Dolphins were all in on 2023 and couldn't win a playoff game. So I think that the model the Dolphins have to take, you said it best, you can't do what the Giants did. Tua is a better player. I don't want people to think I'm saying he's Daniel Jones level, but he hasn't shown you he's worthy of top quarterback money. You do what the Vikings did with, not with the Vikings, excuse me, did what the Commanders did with Kirk Cousins.
Oh, good save.
You say, look,
good save.
Here's what you should do. You say, Tua, listen, man, you can demand a trade if you want. There is no team in the league willing to pay you $250 million. I'm willing to bet the Dolphins win that bet. You say, stick around with us. If you show us you've got it, we will extend you. Otherwise, you're playing out your 5th-year option. Then we're going to tag you.
Tag the hell out of you.
And we could tag you again. Then, if we really wanted, we could tag and trade. Like, there's realistically, the franchise tag, whatever reasons it was implemented, the way it exists now is for teams to keep players around without giving them long-term deals. And there is no player on the Dolphins, I think, where it could make more sense to use that than Tua. Now, it's expensive, right? It doesn't let you do those shenanigans where you make your quarterback's cap hit $3 million a year like the Eagles do, but it limits your long-term risk. And it means that if Tua's not that guy, you have an alternative. You have a way to move on from him at the end of the season.
Yeah, and that's an option where Tua will not like that at all, especially someone with his injury history. How many guys in the league want a long-term deal more than Tua Tagovailoa? Probably not too many. But when you talk about the health of the Miami Dolphins organization, it could be catastrophic to give Tua a mega deal. That is something that, if it doesn't work out, could set the franchise back years and years and years. where all of a sudden now you're sitting there paying Tua, $45 million, $50 million, whatever it might be per year, probably more than, and you're in cap hell. Tua's a good quarterback, but not good enough to get. And listen, by catastrophic, I don't mean Tua sucks, because I would be very surprised if there's a world where Tua is just horrible. But even if Tua is just a little bit above average, we're talking about a league and a conference with superstars who are going to beat that, who have beaten that. We've seen Tua continuously make the big mistake. That's why I can't do it anymore. I know teams are in tough positions, but if it's not a star, I can't just hand out the contract. That's fair, right? That's reasonable.
It is. And here's the thing is, if you want significantly better results than this season, you have to improve the team. There's no way around it. The Dolphins they were a very good team, but it's not like the Chiefs if Patrick Mahomes broke an arm where they're going to come back much better next year. Yeah. Like it didn't, with those second half collapse, somehow losing the division, getting blown out by the Chiefs on the road. Again, I get the circumstances were not favorable for them. It really wasn't favorable for the run game. But at a certain point, again, if you want better results, you have to improve the team. They don't have a lot of ways to improve the team, but if you tie yourself up long-term to Tua, you are ensuring that you never will.
You need to see him break the repeatable the tendencies that he's had. And it happened a lot last year. The Chiefs game, missed the throw to win it. The Eagles had a big interception. The Bills game, big interception. Like in these situations, you basically saw the same Tua Tagovailoa every time. You saw the same Tua Tagovailoa last year.
And the defense with Vic Fangio leaving is likely to regress, if anything. So there's going to be an even bigger burden on the offense to produce.
I like Tua, and I think he can get the job done. But if you had to pick a side, yes or no, you'd have to lean no right now on a big Dolphin run. And that's where it's a tough decision to make, because, there's certainly a level of respect for the player, but you also have to do what's best for the organization. And I'm kind of with you on the tagging.
The thing that alarms me with Tua is we've seen this 2 years in a row now where they get off to a really hot start and then collapse. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Dolphins in 2022, I know Tua was injured. He was out for the last few games, but they were after week 10, they were 7-3. And then in Tua's last 5 games, they were 1-5. Similarly with this year, I mean, we saw how the Dolphins started out. And then they had that collapse. Like they played well against Dallas, but then a collapse against Baltimore, a terrible Buffalo loss, and a collapse against Kansas City. Like it's tough. What separates the good quarterbacks from the great quarterbacks in the league is the good quarterback can put together good games. But the great quarterbacks like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, as the season gets on, they get better. And I worry that what we see with the Dolphins and in general with Mike McDaniel is they spend the early half of the season covering up their weaknesses, trying to look like a supernova. And then when it comes playoff time, when teams are really ready, they keep getting exposed.
When the Chiefs are playing their best football, when the Bengals are playing their best football, when the Bills are playing their best football, that's usually when it seems the Dolphins are arguably playing their worst. It's happened 2 years now. All right, there you go. So for a day where we weren't supposed to have a show, we
hour.
We go for an hour and change on completely random topics.
Well, no, but here's I want people to realize this, right? Like it's easy to say, oh, it's the NFL offseason, the games are over. But if you care about football, there's always interesting stuff going on. Free agency's coming up. Our free agency preview will be coming. Our postseason recaps have yet to be done.
Yep.
Then it's draft time.
Yep.
And then before you know it, it's preseason hype.
It's an all-year sport. It's the best sport by far. See, if the 41 Keys said to us, first off, I love this show. Secondly, you guys are overly gracious in your package assessments. We can be overly gracious at times. We're really
no. It's not gratitude, Paul. It's a trauma response. They've beaten us down so many times. Like, I don't know if I always have to expect the worst, because this was the year, right? We were celebrating early in the season, like finally the Wicked Witch is dead. We've slayed Green Bay. It's the Vikings time. And then you just see Jordan Love snap his fingers. Kirk Cousins ruptures his Achilles.
It's the same game. Yeah,
Jordan Love is a superstar.
It was so fitting to have the game where Kirk Cousins is ripping apart Green Bay, and we really kicked their ass that game, where we just beat the crap out of Green Bay, for it to then end with a torn Achilles to our quarterback playing the best football in his career, and like a week or two later for Jordan Love to say, all right, let me turn it up another level. So he says, overly gracious in your Packers assessment, especially as Viking fans. My question is, do you get any hate mail from Vikings fans for how often and glowingly you cover the Pack? And it's a fun question because a lot of people have wondered that. I'm going to be straight up with you guys because we are always trying.
We're honest. We say what we think.
We don't have many. We don't have many Vikings fans. The channel really got going when the Packers started winning, and you guys came in and were supporting it. And we're very thankful for everybody who's come in and listened to the show along the way. But there's only a few. Merle's a big Viking fan. We have Carl who listens, who's a Vikings fan, but we don't have a lot of Vikings fans. I know Carl was kind of pissed off when we were talking about Jordan Love at one point, but
this thing, I mean, in a certain way, I mean, you can say that, but also I think it's true. We do speak for a certain type of Vikings fan, right? Like most Vikings fans, if you've been a fan of this team for a while, it's tough to get riled up and feel indignant. Because like whoever's talking to you, whoever's saying the thing, the Vikings have done worse to you. They've let you down more. They've insulted you more. They've hurt your feelings more. They've caused you more misery. Like you Green Bay fans, like you think that like it would be a Vikings fan in your DM causing pain. Nothing can cause us more pain than watching the Vikings. So I wouldn't care if we were getting hate mail every single day. It would not match having to watch the things that happen when you're a fan of this team.
Yeah, I really like Packers fans. They're all very good people. The ones that I've met, some of my best friends actually. I'll always have the support Vikings Nation. I mean, we are Vikings after all. We are Vikings fans. So I don't think Vikings fans might be like, yeah, you guys are a little too positive on them. But I'd say we're just saying what we see. That's it. We're not.
We see the Packers. That's it. They're good.
Yeah, we see they're good. We talk about them. We're good. I see Jordan Love work out with Drew Brees. If the Vikings had Jordan Love, he's working out with Drew Brees, I'd be pumped
thrilled.
Up. Yeah, I'd be pumped up. So as long as we're saying what we think, I don't think most people will have a problem with that. It's when you start making up stuff.
If Jordan Love has a rough start to the season, I'm bringing out the balloons. I'm bringing out the confetti. Like I'm celebrating. I don't want any Packers fans watching this. Y'all seem to like me because you think I'm a closet Packers fan. I was hot on this team. I was high on this team. I thought they were pretty good. I want nothing more than for Jordan Love to stink. But he's not going to.
No, he probably won't. I thought you'd enjoy this, Ziggy. Just before we wrap the show here. So this past weekend, first off, I want to say I had a miracle day where I woke up with no hangover, 4 margaritas and 4 Guinnesses, no hangover at all. I don't know how I did that. So I was at this game. Jack's younger brother, Jeffrey, is a sophomore starting on our varsity basketball team here. We were playing against Don Bosco, who was at the time number 6 in the country, and have Dylan Harper, who is currently number 3 recruit in the nation, going to Rutgers next year. Go RU. And it's like a Cinderella story. It's going to be like a miracle on ice sort of thing if we win. And we were up 1 at halftime. I mean, great game. We wind up losing by 13-14, but it was a 2-point game in the fourth quarter. Super fun. Great run for intern Jeff, formerly known as intern Jeff. They played really well. Really proud of them. But it was great. We have these friends, Michael and Brian, who are also at the game. And Michael was on this show for a little while. If you really go back into the archives of this show, you could see our horrible March Madness show with Michael on it, where me and Jack are in my uncle's garage and Michael's in his house with sunglasses, camera way too close to his face. Just a really great but funny guy. And there's one play, Ziggy. I'll make this quick because we should wrap up here. But there's one play where Don Bosco shoots it and off the rim, ricochets up in the air. And Dylan Harper, insane athlete, comes flying in and he jumps 5 feet away, catches it, slams it back in. And Michael just stands up. Remember, our team is like a bunch of 5'10" to 6'1" white kids. That's basically it. We have one 6'3" kid. And Michael stands up and you can hear him on the playback on the video on YouTube just go, box out, box out. What are you doing? And Brian looks over and just goes, Mike, shut up. Like there is no world. Just imagine trying to box out a 6'6" super freak guard. Jeffrey is 5'10" with the ginger with red hair. It's like Jeffrey's not going to do anything about this. It was just everyone in the crowd looked and was like, dude, no one's boxing that. He jumped over him. So I thought you'd enjoy that, though. Good Mike story every once in a while. The jinx. Mike's the jinx.
Yeah, no, that's he's had an appearance on the show a few times, not anymore in person, but his aura looms over.
Yes. If we are ever talking gambling, we'll definitely talk gambling. But if Mike's on our side, it's okay, but there is looming danger. And we'll talk more about his jinxes. We've said in the past. We'll tell more stories as the channel grows. Dude's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. All right, we'll wrap it up here. We've been going for a while. Yeah, 11 o'clock at night now. Jeez. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Check us out. We're also on Spotify. We're trying to grow our audio numbers, but we do prefer people listening on YouTube. But just check it out if you're on the go. It's a little easier to open up Spotify and listen to the show. And you can catch us on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, at Paul Farrington Show or at The Paul Farrington Show. We're trying to get some more stuff there. Actually, Ziggy and I were talking about it. If you're interested, if like you want to work in an internship here, we are looking potentially for people to cut some reels for us. In sports media, I work for The Volume. I'm a producer for The Volume. I'm telling you, cutting reels, cutting YouTube breakout clips, it is the most important. I just had a bunch of my coworkers who were in Vegas for the Super Bowl saying a lot of the executives were mentioning how cutting YouTube and reels are now the most valuable trait in sports media. So if you're interested at all, hope if there are young people listening to this who are trying to get into the space, we're more than happy to talk with you and see what you got. It's a great trait to be able to have if you want to get into this industry. So may as well throw it out there. I mean, we don't even know if we're going to do it.
Paul, you've seen this firsthand, right? You work with some of the biggest names in sports.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge skill. And I actually do think, I'm sitting back here going, is this actually going to be valuable? Could this be valuable to someone? It would be. Like for me,
because we're not trying to scam people, right?
For me, when I remember when I first started working for The Volume, when The Volume first started, my boss is like, my current boss, he's like, yeah, so you work with Premiere at all? This is really before the boom in sports media on YouTube. It's like, you know how to work Premiere, Photoshop? And we had done our draft video, which I did basically none of the editing for. I was like, oh yeah, let me send over this draft video that me and my friend Ziggy did for the NFL draft this year. And that was all the experience I had. If I had the opportunity to do something like this, and I'm not trying to gas this up, I'm just saying, like, if I had the opportunity to do something like this, it would be huge. Think about all the popular shows. You have New Heights, you have all the different volume shows, all these networks that have shows on YouTube. The traits you want producers are to cut. So let us know if you're interested or know someone who's interested. You could recommend it to them. Hit us up in the DMs on Instagram, and we'll talk with anyone. So I guess there we go, Ziggy. We are actively looking for an intern.
Yeah. Hey, it's
just like that. We will see you guys. Everyone have a good weekend, safe weekend, and we'll see you next week with more on the Paul Farrington Show.